Welcome to Visual Studio Online Fundamentals. And in this session, we're going to be talking about managing source code with Git in Visual Studio Online. My name's Stephen Borg.
And I'm James Tupper.
Let's get started. We're going to cover two main areas: choosing whether or not you should use Team Foundation version control or Git, and a demo on using Git. And that demo is going to be a nice one. It's just some really neat stuff with Visual Studio Online and Git.
Really, really cool.
First, you got to pick what you're going to use. So, in determining whether or not you should use Team Foundation version control or Git, which are two different version control paradigms, both available to you in Visual Studio Online, you need to know a few things. First, Git is a distributed version control. A very easy branching and merging. The branching and merging occurs locally, extraordinarily lightweight, integrates seamlessly with things like Visual Studio, as well as lots of cross-platform IDEs. So if you happen to be using something like Xcode, for instance, or an IDE that, any IDE that supports Git, you can use Visual Studio Online with Git. If you flip it and you look at Team Foundation version control, you get a different set of benefits. It's a single source of truth. You have a centralized location where all that version control is held. It's scalable to very, very large repositories. Repositories with gigabytes and gigabytes of data with hundreds of thousands of files very, very easily. And it integrates seamlessly with Visual Studio and Eclipse-based IDEs. So that's kind of the call you have to make, Git or TFVC. Now in this session, we're going to be talking predominantly about Git. Git is one of the world's most popular version control systems, and it's well liked by a lot of people. In fact, James and I both, in a previous MVA course, spent 8 hours teaching you how to use Git. So you can go and check out that course if you want a more extensive how-to with the Git version control system. So James, what say you to a demo? Should we jump in and start a demonstration?
Yeah, let's go for it. And let's start with a project that already has Git code in it, some history, some code in it, using some of the features of Visual Studio Online itself.
Excellent.
Cool. So here we are in a team project on Visual Studio Online. It's the Nirvana team project. It has a few Git repositories, but we're going to be focusing on one of them. If we go ahead and hit one of the area path up here that just says code, that brings us to the Git repositories via the web access. And you'll notice here that I'm connected to a particular Git repository called Data Pipeline Service.
So that's maybe a distinction worth calling out. We can have multiple Git repositories in one team project with Git.
Absolutely.
And with Visual Studio Team Foundation version control, we have then one main location, but we can have multiple different folders underneath that. Okay.
Yep. Which is great because that means you can track your work all together in one place while working on multiple different projects.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
Cool. So here's my Git repository, and you'll notice it's called Data Pipeline Service at the top. That's how you know which Git repository you're connected to. And then on the right-hand side, we have which branch I'm connected to in the Git repository. If we drop those down, we see other Git repositories here, or the other branches that are a part of this Git repository. We're currently connected to the master branch. And what we see here is the Git repository on the left-hand side, the folder structure, as well as all of the files that are part of the Git repository. So I can come in here, dig into the code while in the web access, right? So I can actually connect to a Git repository in the web and dig through the code itself.
Let's see one of them.
Cool. So if I actually jump into one of these, this is a Python repository actually. Its syntax highlights the Python for me. So I can easily come in here and take a look at the code itself. What's in the repository, get great visuals of the actual Python code, and it supports a bunch of different languages.
Excellent.
Really, really cool. I can actually download the file here.
Now, but you don't check in or check out on the web, is that correct?
No, there's no way to actually interact with the Git repository via the web access.
Okay.
But you can still explore it and check out different things.
Sure.
Right? So this is the current version of the Git repository. These are the files that are currently there, the latest version of these files.
Sure.
Right? What you can also do is take a look at the entire history of version control itself. So if we jump from Explorer here to the commits page, that will show us all of the history on that Git repository itself. You'll see when the commit was, a quick summary of the actual commit, the commit message, right? Who changed it, all that sort of stuff. You get a quick hash. So you get to see full history of the commit itself. There's also an option to just choose My Commits, and there's My Commits.
Looks like you were the prime committer on this one.
Yeah.
What are those dots running along the side? What do those do?
Yeah, so these are actually different sizes, and it may be hard to see in the video, but these are all different sizes. They change the size depending on how large that change in that commit was, right? So if I hover above this one file affected. If I hover above another one that has a larger circle or larger dot, we get 2 files affected, and so on. Right? So the larger the dot, the larger the commit actually was, whereas the smaller the dot, the smaller the commit was, right?
Makes sense.
Cool. So moving along, there's also a branches area as part of this code. What this shows us is when I'm connected to a Git repository, which is the data pipeline service, and one of its branches, which is the master branch, if I compare that branch to the other branches, how many commits behind is it, or how many commits ahead is it? Right? So if we were looking from the master branch, how many commits behind is this Python 3 port branch? And you'll notice it's in this red, and it's 54 commits behind, and it's 1 commit ahead, right? Go down one more, we have Python rewrite, 87 commits behind, 4 commits ahead.
Excellent. So that kind of gives me an idea of where my branches are, and maybe some of them are too old and I just want to go delete those eventually.
Yep.
Potentially.
Mm-hmm. Or you can see, are we integrating often, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a branch over here that we're doing some sort of feature development on that we need to integrate more consistently or more often? How
Excellent.
far behind is it?
Yeah.
Cool. Now this last feature is the pull request feature. Pull requests are a great way to merge code from a topic branch or a feature branch into your mainline code. It's essentially a code review. It's a great way to do a code review to bring new code, new feature code, new bug code or defect code into the master branch, into your actual code.
Yeah, from a kind of a Git workflow standpoint, the pull request it's pretty a standard way. So I'll take a branch, I'll do some changes in the branch, and then I'll go back to James and say, hey, here's a pull request for you, and it's got these changes in it. James can look at it and then say, yeah, I like that. Go ahead and merge that into master so we can start moving on from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at a one that's actually completed. Right? So if I jump here and just hit this completed button, there's all my different completed pull requests, and I'm just going to click the top one here. And what that does is that brings us into, we'll see right at the top, we're merging a particular branch into master, and we get a discussion, right? We get the initial, what were the commit messages here, we get that the pull request can automatically be merged without any issues. We'll notice the next thing is interesting is we actually get a commit pushed. What this means is that there was a pull request that was created, there was a change that needed to happen on the branch, the change was pushed to that branch, and the pull request was automatically updated and alert was sent on the pull request itself. Right? So we'll see that halfway through there was another commit. Again, it says that it can be merged automatically. And then you'll see you can actually highlight the code and comment the code, as Andrew did here, saying that this is confusing, right? Which I can totally understand, that my code sometimes does that.
So this is a very interesting thing, because what you have here is the ability to look at code, make comments on it, maybe go back and forth a little bit, and then merge that into the final branch, the master branch.
Yeah, or even if there needs to be an update, it will automatically get pushed to this pull request itself. You don't lose that context, which is great. Cool. So let's actually go into Visual Studio, make a change, push the change up, and see what happens on the web.
Sounds great. I want to stop you for a second, though.
Cool.
You're going to Visual Studio.
Yes.
Where else can I go? Is this the only place I can make these changes?
Not at all. This is just purely Git, and there are dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of clients that you can use with Git, right?
Yep.
So it's completely wide open, command line, Unix system, Linux systems, all that stuff.
Perfect.
Cool. So jump over to Visual Studio, and you'll see I'm connected to the same team project, connected to the same Git repository, and I already have my solution open. So I'm going to jump to the Solution Explorer, open up one of my files, and just make a quick comment. I'm just going to make a quick comment and say, here's my comment. Not the best code change in the world, but it'll do for our purpose. For this purpose. Once we're done, we can just go back to Team Explorer. And Team Explorer is really where you interact with Git via Visual Studio. It has a Git provider built into it. So we'll see here that all the different things you can do with the Git repository are changes, branches, unsynced commits. They're marked in the red over here on the left.
Okay.
So I'm going to jump into changes, and it should have picked up that change I made, that comment I made, right? So I've got to put in a commit message here saying add comment to JSON to blob worker. And just like that, I'm ready to commit. Once I'm done, I commit it.
Now that's now up on the server, right?
Not quite. So this commit, right, it's Git. So when we do a commit, it will commit it to our local repository. It's a distributed version control system.
And that, I think, is one of the main differences when you're making that decision between whether you should go with a TFVC or with a Git repo. Git allows you to do multiple commits locally before you do anything with the server at all. Whereas Team Foundation Server version control, or TFVC, that will ask you to, at every commit, go right to the server itself.
Cool.
Back to you. Sorry for that interruption.
No, you're totally fine. So the next thing we have to do is, because it's only locally and we can have multiple commits per, before we actually push it back to the server, is that we need to sync it, right? And so that's the terminology used in Visual Studio is called sync. So if we jump back to our Visual Studio, we'll see that after we committed it, it actually gives us a warning saying the commit was created locally, sync to share your changes with the server, which is kind of nice. So I'm just going to click that sync button, and it brings me to the unsynced commit page, and I just click sync right here. And what that does is actually it does two things when I click that button. The first thing it does is it does a pull to get any new code that's on the server that I don't have yet, and then it pushes my code from my local Git repository to the server.
Good. Prove it.
Now, let's go back and take a look. If we go to the Explorer of my Git repository and open up that file I just changed, we should be able to see that change. And there it is. Here's comment. Perfect.
Now, one thing I want to note too is that when you do make these check-ins, we didn't do it, but you can associate those with work items as well, and those associations then are persisted. And we have those linkages that occur between your version control and your work items. And I think that's another important feature, not specifically Git related, but that linkage is supported by Visual Studio Online. And I love that VSO is able to do that.
Absolutely. You get the full traceability from commit to tracking your work and back and forth, right? It's fantastic.
So this is wonderful. I love this walkthrough that you've shown me and all the capabilities of Git. But as I'm watching these videos, I might be new to Visual Studio Online. I may have a Git repo already, but I might be brand new. How do I now take the next steps? What's their call to action? What can they do to move forward with Git in their brand new VSO account?
Perfect. Great question. So the first thing that we need to do when you first create a VSO account is that you need to create a Git team project, or a team project that uses Git as its version control system, right? So I have another tab open here on Internet Explorer, and it's just the main page. where we can create new team projects. So there's a little button here called New underneath Recent Projects and Teams, and if I click that, it gives me some options. It gives me a form, and one of those options here is version control. And you'll notice that TFVC is the default option, but we can drop that down and choose Git instead. And I'm just going to call this Git project. Right? Real easy. You can also choose your process template here. I'm just going to keep the default as Scrum and click Create Project. Now what that does is that creates a team project using Git as the version control system. But remember that you can also have as many Git repositories in that team project itself.
I love that. Your team is absolutely going to love this.
Yes, absolutely. So once we're done, let's navigate to the project. Gives us a nice little link right there. Brings us to the team project homepage. So if we already have a Git repository locally that we want to add to Visual Studio Online, just basically push it to Visual Studio Online, it actually walks us through that. So if we jump to the code area here, it created an empty Git repository for us. So there's a couple options here. There's clone an empty Git repository or push an existing one. So let's push an existing one. And the greatest part about this is that it actually gives you the commands to do it from the command line. So right here, down here, you'll notice that you can do it from Visual Studio and it has some links on how to do that, or from the command line with what you need to run via the command line.
I think we should do it via the command line because that proves that we can do it outside of Visual Studio as well. We can do it right from within a command line.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Okay.
So I've actually got a Git repository that I'm in right now on my PowerShell command line, and you'll notice that we're on the master branch, and we just say git status to show us that we are on the branch master. We have a clean working directory. So let's go ahead and bring those commands in, copy and paste them. Switch over, paste it in, and just hit enter.
Nice. Prove it. Type git remote for me.
Git remote.
Sure. Bingo. We've added Origin.
And now you'll notice that Origin has been added as a remote. Now the next thing we need to do is push our code from our local repository to VSO. So go ahead and grab the last command there, copy it, and paste it in, and again, just hit enter. And just like that, it compresses our objects, it pushes our changes right up to VSO. Now the great part about this is that because Git is just a distributed version control system, we have the entire history locally, so that when we push our local Git repository to VSO, it brings that history with it, and we don't lose any of that.
That actually is a really nice thing because you can take an existing Git repository from any other provider, from a local Git repo, from anywhere basically, and you can take that repository and push it to Visual Studio Online with all of its history, and then you get the advantage of being able to start using things like work items, the automatic build, the continuous delivery to Azure. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you get with Visual Studio Online, and this just takes your existing Git repo and drops it right there.
Yep.
I'm gonna say prove it.
Totally.
I'm gonna say prove it.
That's totally fine. So if we go back to the browser and I just hit F5 or click the refresh button here, there's our code.
Brilliant.
That's everything.
It's right there. And click history for me just once.
If we see history,
and there you are.
There's all of our code. All of our history right there.
Excellent. James, that was a fantastic demo. For those of you out there listening, if all you need to do to get onto Git, crazy sound, all you need to do to adopt Git, create that team project, and take your existing Git repo and push it right up to Visual Studio Online. And as a second, if you don't have version control right now, but you want to move to Git, you could take the other path, and the instructions were there. Simply clone an empty Git repository, paste in all of your existing code, and push it right back up to start using Git on Visual Studio Online. Thank you very much, James.
Thanks, Steve.